Here's what I want to do this morning. We're going to have a conversation about lies, damned lies, and coronavirus. Because you are being scammed. In fact, we are being lied to, I think, right now, more than at any point in American history. How are we being scammed? Well, let me count the ways. In fact, what I'm about to show you are just things that have popped into my feed or in the news within the last week or less. So this is not like from the beginning. This is just in the last few days. Let's begin with scam number one. Saw plenty of this last week, and I'm going to single out Ohio State Athletic Director Gene Smith. The Ohio State, or the United States is one of the worst in the world, he said, at handling coronavirus. And he's not alone in saying this. But here are the facts. The U.S. is currently testing more per day than any nation on earth, about 600,000 people a day. We lead the world in total recoveries from coronavirus by more than 200,000. We have fewer deaths per million population than Italy, Spain, France, and the UK. But we do have more cases per 1 million population than any other industrialized nation on earth. In other words, we're testing more, so we're finding more. But what we're finding, we are handling just fine. Does that sound to you like we're handling this the worst on earth? Let's get to the next scam that's come up in just the last few days. Oh, this guy was a favorite, even by some in conservative media. Former FDA bigwig Scott Gottlieb, who has made a career out of pimping the panic porn, putting out there that the U.S. approach on COVID is a tale of two cities. Some states like Connecticut, New York, Massachusetts, they sought to crush the virus. Some like Florida, Texas, Arizona sought the Swedish model and tried to manage the spread of the less vulnerable. Now, that's not even true. Florida, Texas, and Arizona all did far more lockdown than Sweden ever did. That characterization, by the way, is not even true. It's just not even true. That's a lie. That's a lie by itself. But let's continue with the rest of Gottlieb's gobsmack. Without a more uniform U.S. approach, it'll be hard for either strategy to work. Well, let's give you some facts, shall we? Let's take a look at this. Deaths per million population among the crushed the virus states and the managed the spread states. Look at the difference. Good night between New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Texas, Florida, and Arizona. The reverse of what Scott Gottlieb says is true, the reverse. But let me give you some more. It is now mid-July. Here's how New York crushed the virus by getting crushed by it. Essentially, crediting New York with crushing coronavirus is like crediting your teenage son for keeping his abstinence pledge by cutting his penis off. It is mid-July and still 1 out of every 4 deaths in America is from New York in mid-July. 1 out of every 4 coronavirus deaths is still from New York. That's how high the carnage was in that state compared to anywhere else. Furthermore, the combined deaths in Texas, Florida, and Arizona from coronavirus are about 1/3 of the total deaths out of New York, despite triple the population. I don't know what Scott Gottlieb got his PhD in, but it should have been BS. Next scam. Maybe you saw this over the weekend. Texas Governor Greg Abbott warns of possible lockdown if Texans don't wear face masks. So over the weekend, I went and found this study from the Center for Infectious Disease Research at the University of Minnesota, chaired by Dr. Michael Osterholm, who has served in the last 5 presidential administrations. They took a long look at the question of whether or not mask mandates, as a public policy, whether or not they work against the spread of coronavirus. And yes, I know they did this back in April. Here's why it's probably more accurate. because they did this before everything was politicized. Right now, I have no clue what's true. I could find a study that says literally anything on masks right now. That you should cut your face off, never wear a mask, mask your body. Everything is so politicized right now. I don't know what data is true right now from which institution and which isn't. So this comes from April, before we went into full-born panic porn and let's have a civil war over coronavirus mode. Here were the findings of this study published over at the University of Minnesota. Zero evidence that cloth and surgical masks help to stop the public spread of coronavirus, meaning as a public policy, not necessarily with individuals, but as a mask mandate of public policy. Zero evidence that this worked. Starting in Asia, it didn't work. It doesn't even recommend they are used in close quarters for medical personnel at all. Says only the N95, that's the respirator mask, recommended for medical personnel, that has about 95% efficacy in stopping the spread of coronavirus. It goes on to say there is no evidence yet that N95 works for massive public control, and says they're too vital for medical personnel in close corners of virus to waste them just in case, which makes me think that we just haven't studied it because they don't want to risk running out of these respirators in case they do actually work. That's my own personal read on this. And then finally, the conclusion from a study at one of the nation's leading infectious disease centers: before we politicize masks as either a symbol of virtue or a symbol of defiance, is unless you're wearing a perfectly fitted N95, whatever you're covering your face with is probably medically worthless to you or anyone else. So there's that. Let's move on to the next scam. As Captain America once said, I could do this all day. But we're only going to do a few more, okay? Again, these are all things that have just come up in the last few weeks. The 3 biggest states have all broken coronavirus death records. Now, this story was everywhere. I specifically chose this one from Forbes because if you read it, holy cow, you could, if you are on team lockdown, you're masturbating to this story. I mean, this is as political porn as it gets. I mean, this is just like it's a money shot. I mean, of your favorite political porn star. It even says deaths are climbing, contrary to what conservatives are claiming. Right? I mean, this thing, it's just like, this guy's like whoever this guy is, I don't know who he is, but he clearly wants to be the Larry frickin' Flint of media panic porn, because he lays it on thick in this story. Well, let's get to some facts, shall we? Here they are. 65% of the COVID deaths reported by CDC last week. Finally, because they've been waiting for the death lag to catch up. I told you last week, we're already into the 4th week of when the surge began with new cases. We should already be seeing the death lag go up in correlation. We're already in that death lag and we're not seeing it. Well, we got some evidence over the weekend that the death lag is going up. Well, here's one of the reasons why, if not the main reason why. 65% of the deaths of COVID reported by CDC this week occurred more than 4 weeks ago. They're just backfilling now. And it's what the CDC calls, I want to make sure I quote this correctly, provisional deaths. We're just tagging and bagging, baby. That's what that means. You know, like provisional ballots in Florida. We're just going to go till we get the count that we want. We're just tagging and bagging. All right? This one, I might love this one, though, the most. Okay? Because it's self-refuting propaganda is always the best. Look at this headline. All right? This is from Business Insider, where I used to write. Sweden's coronavirus death toll is now approaching 0, but experts are warning others not to hail it as a success. You can't. The headline, I'm not even going to give you anything. That headline just speaks for itself. The headline there just speaks for itself. Again, I could do this all day. I'm just going to give you, though, one more. The kind of thing I wished I was shocked by, but sadly, I am not. Now, check out this story. Now, most of you have no idea who Dr. Joseph Fair is because you're not watching leftist propagandist news outlets. But he was all over the NBC family of networks. Here's a clip of him on the Today Show, chronicling live for the Today Show his battle against coronavirus. He has been on MSNBC how many times talking about this? There's just one problem. There is absolutely zero evidence that despite his 137 minutes, over 2 hours, on MSNBC talking about his battle against coronavirus, there's zero evidence that he actually had it. In fact, he's produced not one, not two, not three, not four, but five negative coronavirus tests. He didn't even test positive for the antibodies. Now, let me make a couple of things here clear. This doesn't mean this isn't a dangerous virus. It is. It also doesn't mean we shouldn't take any precautions, because we should. What it does mean, though, is that most attempts at reasonable discussion between balancing the need to return to as much normalcy as possible and the real data on the virus in our media and culture is poisoned systemically, politically, and therefore should be treated with much skepticism from the outset. The truth is out there. There just aren't that many people interested right now in finding it.